The screams of bloodthirsty monsters echoed through the dark cavern as the comrades apologized for letting a single enemy slip past them toward the hero. Gran spun around in surprise, only to find a trail of fallen bodies behind him. He quickly retrieved his weapon from his inventory and activated his body enhancement, bracing himself for the fight ahead. The enemy lunged toward him, but Gran remained composed as he braced for the impact. In a place where danger was always lurking, it was hard to imagine anyone could actually enjoy a decent meal. The creature lashed out with its long tail and bared its tongue, but Gran delivered a strike that sent it flying. The enemy launched a barrage of spikes, but Gran managed to reach his weapon and strike down the flying creature, leaving it howling and unable to fight back. Glancing to the side, Gran noticed the sword had sliced open a monster's abdomen. Surprised by the intestines he pulled out, he began unwrapping them to take with him. Moments later, the enemy fell lifeless, prompting the hero to activate his magic and survey his surroundings. Deep within the dungeon's most monster-dense sector, he took a steadying breath and returned to gathering trophies while his comrades continued the fight behind him. Gran was recruited by a group of monster hunters, serving as a porter and laborer to fill a gap in their ranks. Noting that the area was nearly cleared, the knight pointed out that only the loot remained to be collected before sheathing his weapon and announcing he was moving on. This realm was forged from concentrated mana, where every fallen creature eventually dissolves into magical energy and disappears, leaving the boy standing alone amidst a sea of defeated enemies. Gran's primary responsibility was to harvest rare materials from the fallen monsters before their remains vanished completely. His partner noted that within an A-rank team, even a porter is far from ordinary. The knight added that Gran was a seasoned combatant, making his role as a porter nothing more than a secondary task. Typically, porters were low-ranked adventurers with little combat prowess, hired for a modest fee to support the main group of fighters. Gran joined the group to serve as both a fighter and a porter, though his actual situation didn't quite go as planned as he smiled while gathering the necessary materials. Outmatched by the overwhelming strength of his teammates, he was relegated to the simple task of gathering trophies. A torch along the wall suddenly flared to life, catching the hero by surprise. Gran's teammate observed that he was avoiding the fight to focus entirely on gathering loot, a fact the young man admitted before continuing to stock his inventory with food. The chief knight observed that Gran's true advantage lay in his ability to harvest materials with zero waste, maintaining his composure even while surrounded by enemies and incoming projectiles. He's more than capable of taking down a salamander, maintaining a calm and steady composure even when hunting high-ranking monsters, a level of confidence far beyond what any low-skilled porter should possess. Ultimately, partnering with Gran proved far more efficient and lucrative than hiring a low-tier porter, as their collaboration would lead to much higher earnings. As Grant began preparing a meal, the witch hurried to his side, expressing her hunger and asking how much longer the food would take. The hero promised she wouldn't have to wait long, but the girl immediately began demanding meat, specifically requesting a meal made from the salamander. The boy had to refuse, explaining that the meat wasn't ready yet since it still needed to be skinned and properly prepared. With other meats already prepared, the group would have to make do with the current selection. Elf then approached, noting that while the fish was good, she was still in the mood for meat. She also mentioned her craving for something sweet, and was delighted to learn that dessert was on the menu. After instructing the group to help set the table, the young man caught them off guard by pulling a full dining set directly from his inventory. The girls were astonished to see Gran pull anything he needed from his bag, though it was actually a storage skill rather than a physical magic item. Since the magic bag skill was incredibly rare, he kept a physical pouch on his belt to maintain the illusion that he was simply using a spatial artifact. Aware that exposing the truth could invite unwanted trouble, he kept the nature of his ability a closely guarded secret, sharing it only with a few trusted allies. After finishing the cooking, the boy turned off the stove to set the table, having prepared a dish of fried onions and minced wyvern and griffin meat. The hero seasoned the mixture with salt, pepper, and nutmeg before adding a splash of milk, followed by the egg and breadcrumbs. As the ingredients were blended to a smooth consistency, the others finished setting the table in eager anticipation of the meal. While standard adventurer rations usually consist of bland canned goods or dry, tasteless pretzels, the hero instead began shaping fresh cutlets from minced meat. Surprised to find field rations deep within the dungeon, one of the comrades marveled at the meal's unexpectedly high quality. Regardless, getting everything ready proved to be quite an undertaking. As he worked on his sculpture, the young man considered using his storage skill to carry cooking supplies so he could prepare fresh meals on the go. Unwilling to settle for unappetizing food, he soon had a pan of cutlets sizzling on the stove. As the meal was finished, steam billowed from beneath the lid, and Grant apologized to the group for the delay. The team expressed their delight at the sight of the meat, noting how incredible it smelled, while Grant explained that he had prepared an extra-large portion so everyone could eat their fill. As the appetizing meal was served, the heroes eagerly dug in with clear anticipation. Seeing everyone so genuinely delighted by the food, the young man couldn't help but laugh. Grant's teammates competed with one another, thrusting their empty plates forward for seconds. A friend praised the meal as a masterpiece that surpassed even professional restaurant fare. The team leader agreed, noting that having Gran in the party always guaranteed an exceptional meal, leaving the entire group in high spirits. The boy insisted that he couldn't be swayed by food, explaining that his large appetite was simply due to a growth spurt and that such minor offerings wouldn't influence him. However, his resolve was immediately tested when Gran approached to announce that dessert was ready, encouraging him not to be shy. Everyone in attendance eagerly began tasting the treat. The protagonist was a versatile B-rank adventurer, well-suited for both combat and any task thrown his way. This was exactly where he fit in among his fellow adventurers. Eventually, Gran's name began to surface during conversations at the Adventurers Guild. One of his comrades knelt before him, offering a sincere apology for his past insults and expressing his gratitude. Brimming with pride, the young man declared his resolve to follow in Gran's footsteps and work tirelessly until he reached B rank. Grant cautioned him against overexerting himself, while the leader promised to catch up later before bidding him farewell. Surprised by how attached the man had become, the hero wondered if the stake he shared had really been good enough to earn him these extra provisions. Seeking to offer him both security and status, the knight extended a formal invitation to join the party, but the young man's polite refusal left him visibly frustrated. He intended to stay confined in the dungeon for several months to focus on his research. Grant expressed how much he longed for a proper bed and the simple luxury of a bath. The knight then requested that he wouldn't decline the offer next time, a sentiment that brought a sense of relief to the protagonist. Always eager to lend a hand, Gran had no reservations about joining the group, as he found collaborating with others to be quite natural. While he valued the stability of serving under a leader and sharing rewards with his comrades, Grant chose to remain independent, doubting his prospects as a B-ranker and considering a different path for his life. Seeking some clarity, the young man took a stroll down the street, where a recruitment sign caught his eye and prompted him to investigate further. Grant concluded that the time for a change had finally come, prompting him to leave his life of adventure behind in favor of farming and fulfilling simple guild requests. Finally, the hero had the opportunity to dedicate himself entirely to his personal interests. Gran purchased a home in the quiet countryside, far removed from the chaotic energy of the city. This secluded location allowed him to utilize his skills without drawing any unwanted attention. Having settled in, the young man finally decided it was time to reveal his true status. Gran believed that a life of cooking and crafting would grant him ultimate freedom as he embarked on this new chapter. However, before he could begin, he reflected on his past, realizing he still retained all the memories of his previous life. The world and nation he now inhabited were entirely foreign, a stark contrast to his past life in Japan. Raised in a perfectly average household, he transitioned into a typical adult life that was entirely free of any extraordinary events. He spent most of his downtime lost in books or playing video games. Reflecting on his past, he realized how peaceful his home country had truly been, lacking any magic or monsters that would have forced him to take up a blade. This explains his deep fascination with fantasy-based virtual worlds, where he could control his own avatar and focus on character progression and item collection. He found a sense of fulfillment in the steady grind, methodically improving his hero's attributes and expanding his inventory capacity. While the hero couldn't recall the circumstances of his death, he still retained faint memories of his former career and daily routine. 5 years after his birth in this new world, Grant was suddenly overwhelmed by a flood of information as the memories of his past life came rushing back. Stretching as he woke to the new day, the boy's first move was to open his status window. Grant focused on the data panel appearing before him, meticulously reviewing his stats to better understand his current situation. Realizing he could now visualize his skills and attributes, Grant examined his status screen, where the title of hero stood out above everything else. Despite the status screen confirming his profession, no grand destiny ever materialized, leaving him to live an ordinary life, a strange outcome for the son of the hero who defeated the Demon King. As the word hero appeared on his status screen, the young man's heart began to race with excitement. Ever since he was a child, those around him recognized his sharp intellect and impressive memory, though he lived with a lingering sense of isolation long before his past memories resurfaced. It felt only natural for him to see himself as someone special, but possessing a skill that led to constant failure left him feeling uneasy, especially given the knowledge he carried from his past life. The young man initially attempted to walk the path of a hero, but he soon reconsidered and gave up on the notion entirely. The protagonist began refining his survival skills, hunting down weak monsters and forest animals to gather resources. His upbringing was much like any other child's in the village, where he spent his days assisting the adults beyond the town's borders by foraging for wild fruits and herbs. The moment the boy picked up a weapon, new skills instantly manifested, allowing him to hunt far more efficiently than his peers, and even granting him access to archery. As his skills eventually hit a plateau, his growth slowed so significantly that he soon became indistinguishable from the other children. The true turning point came when he realized he was completely unable to use magic, a discovery that left Grant visibly shaken. As the other children began mastering one magical skill after another, he remained unable to cast even a basic spell, no matter how much effort he put in. A glance at his parameters revealed that his magic power far surpassed all of his other attributes. Regardless of the circumstances, Grant still found himself unable to wield any magic. Observing his peers master basic magic left the boy feeling envious and inadequate, as by age 10 his skills remained only slightly above average compared to the true prodigies. Crushed by an overwhelming sense of defeat, he finally abandoned his dreams of heroism. With the world enjoying a period of relative peace, he often found himself gazing thoughtfully into the distance. While monsters were undeniably real, they were simply viewed as an integral part of the natural order. While no reports of a true universal evil like the Demon King existed, rumors circulated about a demi-human nation known as the Demons, whose ruler was occasionally given that title. Rather than any mention of war or conquest, the nations were simply engaged in standard commercial trade. While the young man once dwelled on the true meaning of heroism, his perspective shifted after becoming an adventurer. He soon realized the title was merely granted to those who wielded weapons and magic, rather than being reserved for legendary saviors with extraordinary powers. Upon qualifying for the guild at just 12 years old, the young man set out to live on his own terms. He had personal motivations for beginning his journey as an adventurer so early, and while his former identity had faded away, he found a new sense of purpose through the explorer gift. This gift specialized in research and information processing, covering everything from physical objects to abstract concepts. It allowed the user to effortlessly locate and analyze any data or item, making it a truly broken cheat ability. The storage skill allowed its user to transport any inanimate object into a specialized virtual space, because it could hold anything lacking a will of its own, including plants and microorganisms. It was considered an incredibly versatile asset. While the storage capacity was initially limited, it expanded as the skill leveled up, eventually allowing for time manipulation within the space, though monsters remained impossible to store. After fully mastering his new skill, Grant began hunting monsters relentlessly while balancing his training and resource gathering. By leveraging his inventory and search skill, he could easily manage every item stored in the vault, as Grant had moved on from the hero's fate to focus on his new passion for gathering materials. After becoming an adventurer, he traveled through many lands, hunting monsters and exploring uncharted territories to quietly gather every resource he could find. Relishing his newfound freedom, the young man found the simple process of gathering various materials and items to be a truly rewarding experience. Grand paused on the grass to open his inventory, taking a moment to admire the collection of items he had successfully gathered. Finding deep relaxation in the activity, he lay on the ground and gazed at the sky, feeling as though his soul had been purified. With his own home and base finally established, the hero prepared to use his gathered materials and expertise to take the first steps toward an independent life. He realized that even a cycle of trial and error could be beneficial if he wasn't chasing perfection, especially when leveraging his current crafting skills and gathered resources to further his development. As Gran wandered the streets, he couldn't help but notice the peculiar items on display. His companion explained that the fair draws merchants from across the land, making it a prime location to uncover rare and valuable treasures. The two navigated the busy streets together, sharing a laugh as they browsed through an assortment of materials and potions. When the protagonist inquired about the shop's business, Kersia explained that things were quiet because of the Itsichi fair. Since the local festival had drawn most of the potential customers away, he had left his sister in charge of the shop for the day. He explained that attending these types of events was simply another requirement of his job. Grant came to a sudden halt, his attention fixed on something in the distance. The merchant approached the young man to inform him that the item had finally arrived from a distant territory. Intrigued by the strange object, the hero inquired about its origins, leading the seller to explain that rumors traced it back to a land far to the east. Because he had purchased the item himself in a neighboring state's port city, he lacked specific details, though he noted that while the most sought-after pieces were already gone, a few rare finds were still available. Carefully turning the object over in his hands, the protagonist realized it was an abacus, much to Kersia's surprise at her brother's recognition of it. The boy offered a bright smile, explaining he had read about such devices in books, though he privately chuckled, knowing these were actually memories from his previous life. The merchant admitted he'd originally purchased the abacus thinking it was a musical instrument, but after failing to sell it, he offered a discount. Grant accepted the deal, noting that the black liquid in the bottle originated from the eastern lands, and cast a subtle glance to the side. The merchant explained that the liquid was priced low because it lacked any interested buyers. It was a seasoning derived from beans, though its unpleasant aroma tended to drive people away. Curious, the hero asked if he could sample the scent for himself. The man agreed but cautioned him that the smell would be quite sharp. After taking a moment to catch his breath, the young man declared he would buy out the entire stock, even if there was more hidden away. Curious sniffed the air, trying to identify the scent, while the salesman laughed and revealed he had nothing left to sell. Grand inquired if he could find more of the black liquid by traveling east, to which the seller revealed he had acquired his supply in the port city of Ovaro. Located east of the kingdom of Shilindor, the merchant had originally purchased the substance from a traveler hailing from a mysterious, far-off land. The protagonist asked if any wheat-like grains had arrived from the east, but the merchant explained he had none, suggesting instead that something intriguing might be found in Oaru. Opening the box, the salesman revealed a bottle of alcohol he had acquired from the same merchant. Grant was intrigued by the liquid's clear appearance and subtle fragrance, leading the man to explain its higher price before asking if he was interested. As the hero agreed to the deal and prepared his payment, he was given some Ryun fruit seeds as a complimentary bonus for his purchase. After opening the package, the man was left stunned by what began to unfold. Activating his appraisal skill, the young man confirmed the rice's existence, and while he couldn't secure it just yet, he remembered from his past life that it was used to create an alcohol called sake. Occasionally, Gran encountered things that triggered lingering memories of his previous life. It's probable that others are scattered across this world, still holding on to their memories of Japan. He found himself wondering if he would ever cross paths with someone like that. Kirsch suddenly approached Gran to inquire about his recent purchases, leading the young man to explain that he had bought soy sauce and rice sake, admitting he had never seen anything like it. The boy asked about the object's purpose, prompting the young man to present an abacus and explain its function as a calculation tool, which left the boy amazed that such a device could be used for counting. He explained that while an abacus seemed simple, it was perfect for handling large numbers and easy to learn. He mentioned that one could be commissioned from a local craftsman, or even built by hand, leaving Kersia impressed by his extensive knowledge. Grant acknowledged that while producing these invoices is a painstaking process, it is entirely achievable with enough time. He remained confident that anyone who took on the challenge would surely succeed. Recognizing that the abacus would be a massive help to merchants if it simplified calculations, the boy eagerly requested a lesson on how to use it. Grant clarified that the dark liquid was soy sauce, a fragrant bean-based seasoning, while the other item was sake, a potent rice wine used for both drinking and cooking. Beyond the meal being delicious, Kersia laughed and remarked on Grant's impressive knowledge. The hero quickly clarified that life as an adventurer naturally exposes you to a wide variety of sights, leading the boy to conclude that this was exactly why his friend followed that path. Kersia felt a deep envy for the hero's adventures, as his own travels were limited to routine supply runs in neighboring towns. He dreamed of finally exploring uncharted territories, a wish that started to take shape when Grant offered him a security position for his future expeditions. Kersia felt a wave of embarrassment, but Grant insisted that undertaking such a long journey without protection was simply not an option. Recognizing that the adventurer would keep him safe, the young man sheepishly agreed and pointed toward a nearby food kiosk. They made their way over to browse the available selection for themselves. Stepping ahead of the others, the young man pointed toward a grill where thick cuts of meat were sizzling appetizingly. The party paused in their tracks, taking a moment to appreciate the inviting aroma. After purchasing several portions, the pair settled onto a bench to enjoy their meal, with the protagonist and the boy eagerly devouring every bite of the delicious food. Over their meal, Grant mentioned receiving a ticket while buying shoshlik at a guild shop, which Kersia explained was a lottery entry awarded by the Merchant Guild's partners. He managed to obtain the ticket while he was there having lunch. After they finished their meal, the merchant suggested they try their luck in the lottery. The hero noted that he needed to eat heartily to maintain his body, his primary tool, leaving the boy envious of the chance to experience such a wide variety of flavors. Noticing several untried dishes still sitting on the counter, they suggested sampling a small portion of everything that was left. The boy promised to finish any leftovers so Kersia could sample a wider variety of dishes. Feeling flustered by the offer, Kersia retorted that he had already eaten his fill. Chuckling, the hero remarked that if he had realized the situation sooner, he could have treated the boy to a much wider variety of delicious food. Feeling a bit sheepish, the young man offered a smile and quickly reassured his companion that everything was fine, promising to try whatever they liked at the next Itsichi. Onlookers stopped in their tracks, stunned to see the protagonist approaching the house with a massive bull carcass slung over his back. Glancing back at their heavy haul, the hero asked Kersia where they should store the carcass, noting it would only be a hindrance. Just then, a girl emerged from the house, noticing Kersia's return and inquiring about how his Itsichi had gone. She started to welcome them back, only to be startled by the enormous beast Grant was carrying on his shoulders, while Kersia stood nearby, overjoyed to see his sister again. Struggling to process what she had just witnessed, the girl suddenly let out a sharp scream. Grant quickly clarified the situation, explaining that Kersia had won an entire meat carcass as a lottery prize. While the boy marveled at Grant's strength for carrying such a massive load, the girl confirmed it was indeed the carcass of a black buffalo. The hero clarified that his physical prowess was the result of a body enhancement skill. Kersia pointed out that in a remote place like Piedmont, it was incredibly rare to see someone hoist a buffalo carcass with such ease. His sister added that even among high-ranking adventurers, a feat of that magnitude was quite uncommon. The boy apologized for the wait, but the girl insisted the delay was actually their fault. After the protagonist carefully lowered the carcass to the ground, the group set to work butchering it. The entire task proved unexpectedly simple, and as a token of gratitude for their assistance with the butchering, the group was permitted to keep the meat. Since the others had no use for the tail or the remaining bones, the young man was allowed to take those for himself as well. The boy was taken aback that he was permitted to keep both his tongue and tail, while also finding it hard to believe that bones could actually be put to use. They explained that buffalo tongue is highly regarded for its unique texture and flavor when stewed or fried, while the tail is best suited for a rich soup, and the bones serve as a base for both broth and alchemy. Kersia was impressed by Grant's culinary expertise, which Gran explained was a result of his many nights surviving in the wilderness. Having to forage for resources and cook monsters on the spot had forced him to master the art of cooking out of sheer necessity. After explaining that he had already butchered the meat, the boy marveled at their impressive haul. Even though the two carcasses weren't particularly large, Gran worried they wouldn't be able to finish all the food before it spoiled. The hero advised that the meat needed to be sold or consumed immediately, noting that smoking it would preserve it longer, just as it would for their other drinks and provisions. Recognizing the logic behind the plan, the boy decided to act, approaching Kersia with a suggestion to stay for dinner. Since they had meat available and a place to spend the night, the young man quickly agreed to the proposal. The boy immediately began clamoring for steaks, prompting the protagonist to select a specific cut of the carcass. He chose a section the animal rarely used for movement, ensuring the meat remained exceptionally tender. Grant suggested enhancing the meal with soy sauce, garlic, and spices from the market, confident it would make the dish far more flavorful. He explained that he would cook the meal himself if granted access to the kitchen, while also expressing a sincere desire to taste a steak prepared by the master. Driven perhaps by a habit from his past life, the young man handled his food with meticulous care, choosing to cook for himself now that he had familiar seasonings and high-quality meat. After igniting the stove, he began prepping the vegetables while Kersia quietly observed him. After heating oil in the pan, they added the vegetables to simmer, letting an appetizing aroma fill the air as the cooking continued. Kersia complained that he was starving, and despite being told to wait, he began pouring the seasoning from the frying pan onto a plate. With the meat already prepared and emitting a faint glow, the young man set to work slicing it into pieces. He efficiently sliced the meat into thin layers to finish the prep work, after which they both seasoned the pieces with salt and pepper. He laid the meat into the frying pan to begin cooking. As the hero began frying the food, a girl approached him to compliment the appetizing aroma, and he noted that the meal was nearly finished. His older sister asked for help with the preparations, and Kersia quickly rushed out to assist her. Once both sides were browned, he lowered the flame to finish cooking the meat to his preferred medium doneness before drizzling the remaining sauce over it. After Gran added a splash of soy sauce, the boy watched with a smile, his mouth watering in anticipation of the meal. After plating the meat, a faint glow and a savory aroma signaled that the black buffalo steak was finally ready. The young man brought the meal to the table, announcing it was finished and thanking everyone for their patience. Once everyone was seated, they began sampling the meat, savoring each bite. The two children perked up as the group enjoyed the feast together, sharing a moment of genuine happiness. Kersia noted that the meal's aroma and flavor were quite appetizing, leading his sister to explain that the black buffalo meat was surprisingly tender, despite her initial expectations that it would be tough and sinewy. Taking a bite of the meat, the hero felt satisfied with the way things were unfolding as he quietly observed the atmosphere. When asked about the dark sauce, he noted that while its initial scent was unusual, heating it revealed a savory flavor that paired perfectly with garlic, marking the hero's first encounter with this rare, foreign seasoning. Kersia was taken aback by the young man's apparent ignorance of the ingredients, but the boy simply sighed, explaining that while he understood the recipe, the process was far too grueling and complex, leading him to take matters into his own hands. Inspecting the bottle, the boy noted that if this seasoning were more common, it could completely transform the culinary world, and he offered to help locate it through some merchants he knew. The protagonist explained that despite his unsuccessful attempts to find these items back in the capital, he had finally managed to luck out today. When the boy asked if the item was produced in the East, the hero explained that while possible, reaching the eastern border alone would take a month, and rumors suggested it originated from an even more distant land, a long journey the hero could already see himself undertaking. The hero considered seeking help from a mage specialized in teleportation, though he was adamant about not involving his friend. The young man clarified that even if he were to leave, it wouldn't be any time soon, as he had just purchased a home and wanted to enjoy a quiet life for a while. Meanwhile, Gran decided to set the matter of the soy sauce aside for another day. As night fell, an owl watched over the village from its perch. Inside, the young man guided Kersia through the fundamentals of accounting. Meanwhile, his older sister was busy setting the dining table. They spent the time discussing various topics, including drinks, soy sauce, and the use of an abacus. Later that evening, the hero took a quick bath to refresh himself. As morning broke, he thanked his hosts for their hospitality and breakfast, promising to bring a supply of potions when they eventually crossed paths again. The children shouted their final goodbyes, with Kersia reassuring Gran that they would surely meet again. In addition to his potions, the hero decided to craft a new abacus and a ring to lighten his load, ensuring it also provided some protection in case of an emergency. Gran soon discovered that the forest was abundant with resources, illuminated by a gentle light and a thin veil of mist. Taken by surprise, the hero began foraging for local plants while keeping a close eye on his status window to monitor his food supplies. After carefully stowing his harvest, the young man noted the greenery was sufficient to restock the shop, but sensing there was still more to be found, he drew a small dagger. He realized that without Kersia, he likely would have remained a recluse in the forest, having crossed paths with her shortly after his arrival in the area. Gran settled onto a tree stump, taking a moment to savor his delicious meal. These events unfolded just outside the city of Viscounty Sortel in the Piedmont region. Although this provincial town sat far from the capital, its location on the main road to the border ensured a constant stream of travelers and trade. The surrounding forests were home to various magical creatures. A modest adventurers' guild also operated within the town itself. Situated as a key transit point leading to the country's outskirts, the city served as a vital logistical hub for the merchant guild, housing numerous inns and essential facilities. Upon entering a local establishment, the hero ordered the daily special and was soon presented with a steaming hot plate of food. The daily special was a wild boar stew that glistened invitingly, exuding a rich and appetizing aroma. Gran sampled the dish and commented on its excellent quality. The sweet fat melted away while the boar meat, typically quite tough, became incredibly tender. Though the young man had stumbled upon the shop by pure chance, he had clearly made the right choice. He finished by savoring every last drop of the fragrant liquid left at the bottom of his bowl. After offering his thanks and leaving a few coins for the meal, Grant made his way toward the Adventurers Guild office in Piedmont. After making his way upstairs, Gran approached the notice board and began scanning the available tasks. Looking up in surprise, the girl watched as Grant approached and requested to transfer his registered office to this branch. Startled by the hero's unexpected proposal, she jumped and asked him to clarify his request. After Gran handed over his ID, the receptionist gasped in surprise at his B-rank status. He explained that he had recently relocated and needed to register, prompting a bright smile from the employee, who noted that high-ranking adventurers were a rare sight in their office. He pushed back, explaining that despite his B-rank status, he wasn't strong enough to be relied upon. Having just moved to an apartment outside the city, he noted that he wouldn't be taking on many missions anytime soon, which visibly disappointed the girl. She voiced her hope that he would at least take on assignments from time to time. He reassured her that he wouldn't ask any unnecessary questions whenever he felt like working. He then promised that once he was fully settled in, he would definitely start contributing to the workload. Just as he was about to depart, the girl's plea stopped him in his tracks. Gran returned to the notice desk to finish reading and, finding the tasks simple enough, decided he would definitely take them on during his next visit. He then made his way to the Merchants Guild, finding it teeming with vendors and lively activity as he stepped inside. Once again, he had to update his registration, handing over his ticket and counting out the required coins. While adventurers rise through the ranks based on their feats, a merchant's standing is defined by the annual fees they pay the guild, meaning Grand was currently limited to selling his goods at the local market. Because his activities were limited to street performing, his registration fees remained low, resulting in him being placed at the lowest level, E rank. To trade at the Itsichi Bazaar, Gran first had to register at the reception desk. After a polite clerk instructed him to fill out an application, he realized he still needed to head out and purchase the goods he intended to sell. As he journeyed along the mountain's edge, the protagonist realized he had already gathered all the essentials for survival, with plenty of room left in his pack for the vegetable seeds he'd recently acquired. Humming a soft melody, the boy eagerly awaited the chance to plant them in the garden beds. Suddenly, a bright glow and a loud noise erupted behind him, causing him to turn around and stare ahead with visible tension. Startled by a sharp noise, the hero turned toward the road, suspecting two massive creatures had just collided. and drew his weapon to investigate the source. A powerful roar echoed from the forest as a beast crashed through the trees, leading to a violent collision between two predators with their fangs bared. A formidable boar and a stone python squared off, locking eyes as they let out menacing growls. Grand viewed both animals as valuable trophies and sources of food, deciding to intervene and claim the spoils while recalling the taste of the boar he had recently eaten. The young man fortified his body with magic before unleashing a surge of energy with a single swing of his weapon. Leaping over the clashing combatants, the hero launched a swift counterattack. Reaching the peak of his leap, he swung his weapon with precision to finish off one of the enemies. The stone python collapsed lifelessly to the ground, and the focus immediately shifted toward the boar. The boar let out a piercing roar and lunged at the boy, who quickly turned to face it just as Grant delivered a sharp, decisive swing of his hand. Without warning, the boar's carcass collapsed and froze in place. Letting out a breath, Grant swung his weapon once more and wiped away the blood, clearly satisfied with his victory. With a quick wave of his hand, the young man accessed his inventory to store the fallen carcasses, but his attention was soon caught by something unusual near the road. Concerned that someone might have been caught in the crossfire, he peered inside the cart to investigate. Grant suspected the driver had managed to escape along the shoreline, so he decided it was worth searching the surrounding area for any clues. Not far from the cart, the hero discovered a young boy lying unconscious in the bushes, covered in bruises, but still clinging to life. Grant rushed over to lift him up and check on his condition, suspecting the boy had taken a heavy blow. After loading the boy into the cart, he tended to the horse's injury by rinsing it with water, causing the animal to whine. He then checked if it was still capable of pulling the load, to which the horse gave a grateful whinny in response. As the sun rose, the carriage resumed its journey, but the hero soon caught sight of something trailing them from behind. Jolting awake, the boy frantically searched for his merchandise, prompting Gran to ask if he was finally conscious. In a state of confusion, the young man questioned who the main character was and spoke about the appearance of giant monsters. The hero offered some reassurance, explaining that the monsters had already been defeated. With the cargo scattered and the cart tilting, they decided to make their way toward Piedmont before nightfall. The protagonist explained he was merely a random passerby, leaving the boy visibly taken aback. He questioned if the boy was the one who had emerged victorious, to which the boy agreed, dismissing the great boar and stone python as mere oversized beasts lacking any real strength. After inquiring about traveling to Piedmont, the boy explained he was already on his way back and asked if the young man was the one who had rescued him. He explained that he was simply in the right place at the right time, prompting the boy to offer a sudden word of thanks. Suddenly, the young man winced as a sharp pain shot through his injured leg. Realizing he must have been thrown from the carriage when it tilted, and knowing he needed to drink a healing potion immediately, the young man handed the potion to the boy, who accepted it with a nod and took several sips. This fast-acting medicine was infused with magical energy, and when consumed orally, was highly effective at treating injuries of this nature. The protagonist inquired whether the potion had been effective. The young man confirmed the situation and apologized for the trouble he had caused, introducing himself as Kersia. After explaining that he worked at his family's shop in Piedmont, the boy expressed his gratitude and offered to guide the hero back there, while Kersia took the opportunity to ask about the price of the potion. The boy modestly replied that no thanks were necessary. He then explained that he had actually brewed the potion himself. Surprised, Kersia asked if he truly possessed the skill to craft such items. This revelation clearly caught Kersia off guard. Kersia then admitted that he was only capable of creating simple mixtures himself. The boy's face instantly brightened upon learning the hero had crafted the potion himself, and he eagerly began asking which herbs grew near his home. Reaching out to grab him, Kersia asked the hero to accompany him to the store for a private discussion, leaving the young man feeling a bit flustered. The group pressed forward on their shared path, eventually arriving at the city. The merchant Kersia approached the hero, identifying him as a seasoned adventurer and noting the origins of his equipment. When the boy asked if he was staying at the inn, Gran explained that his home was actually located in the nearby forest. Kersia observed that the forest was teeming with wildlife and monsters, but the hero explained that his protective barrier made living there surprisingly manageable. He correctly surmised that the other boy was also roaming the forest to collect potion ingredients. Kersia's business proposal centered on medicinal potions, a fact the boy confirmed. He explained that since the elderly woman who ran the local apothecary in Piedmont had recently retired and closed her shop, the area was now facing a critical shortage of supplies. They had been sourcing potions from a nearby town to resell locally, but high shipping costs and limited stock made the business difficult. Grand realized this was exactly why they were so eager to buy from him directly. The boy confirmed they would be deeply appreciative if such a thing were possible, while Crane wondered if the outcome depended on the specific terms of their deal. They arrived at the store shortly after, leaving everyone surprised by how quickly the journey had passed. Anyone visiting Piedmont is well advised to stop by the Pachero department store, a massive establishment known for carrying nearly everything imaginable. Light glowed from the windows of Passero's shop as Kersia stepped inside, announcing that he had finally returned home. The young man's sister was delighted by his return, though Kersia explained that a monster on the road had delayed them. Seeing the girl's concern, the young man reassured her he was unharmed, mentioning that he had been rescued by a hero who was now joining them as a guest. He introduced Gran to his elder sister, Alicia, who offered a polite bow and expressed her pleasure in meeting him. She identified herself as Kersia's older sibling and thanked him for the help he had given her younger sister. Stunned by the revelation, the protagonist turned around and explained that he'd only slain the monster because he happened to be passing by on a walk. However, his true shock came from realizing the girl was actually his younger sister, as her boyish appearance had completely misled him. Beaming with happiness, the girl adjusted her hat and explained that she disguised herself as a man for safety while shopping alone. She then asked Gran to wait inside while she quickly finished unloading the goods. Alicia requested an escort to the reception as closing time approached, while Gran offered to help with the unloading, driven by more than just a desire to impress her. Before long, the group settled in with some warm tea, and Alicia apologized for burdening the boy with the shop's chores. He reassured her that as an adventurer, he was well acquainted with hard work and truly didn't mind helping out. Grateful for the support he provided their younger sister, the Kersia family thanked Gran and offered him his choice of payment, a gift, or any item from their shop. The protagonist paused to reflect on his situation. Explaining that he was a newcomer interested in commerce, he noted that he had already joined the merchant guild despite not having a specific plan yet. For now, he simply intended to start by opening a stall at the bazaar. He inquired about securing a small section of the shop to sell his goods on a commission basis. The protagonist agreed to compensate them for the space and noted that the potions they had discussed would likely prove quite useful. Kersia reacted with visible disbelief, clearly stunned by the sudden revelation. The girl proposed focusing on the potions and recommended selling them wholesale, an idea Gran accepted since it allowed him to display his other goods on consignment within the shop. Kersia was surprised by the adventurer's enthusiasm for the deal. Gran admitted that he hadn't initially planned on doing any serious trading, having originally intended to just set up a tent at the market and see what happened. This led the girl to remark on how perfectly everything was working out. Alicia was surprised to discover the stranger's alchemy skills, and her interest only grew when the hero revealed he could even brew high-ranking potions. He explained that adventurers could save a significant amount of gold by brewing their own potions, suggesting they use their identification skills to verify the quality of his work. Taking him up on the offer, the girl began inspecting the remarkably clean and polished vials. The girls were struck by the exceptional quality of the potions, noting that they far surpassed the stock from their former pharmacy and even outperformed the supplies found in the neighboring town. Following this, the group approached Gran and respectfully requested that he enter into a formal supply agreement with them. He admitted that mass-producing the potions was impossible, but he promised to brew as many as he could manage. Kersia clarified that because the local area lacked powerful monsters and the settlement was small, there wasn't a high demand for supplies, noting that standard healing potions were used much more often than high-ranking ones. Furthermore, they were in search of affordable remedies to neutralize venom from snakes and insects. Alicia requested the contract from Kersia, who immediately hurried off to retrieve it, while Alicia turned toward the adventurer with a suddenly serious expression. She wasted no time in clarifying the essential financial terms. The girl's sudden smile carried a hidden intensity that made the stranger break out in a nervous sweat, while the moonlight illuminated the quiet, late-night street. By the following morning, the boy realized that the demand for potions in Piedmont was driven more by the local townspeople than by visiting adventurers. Stamina restoration potions were generally in much higher demand than those meant for simple healing. Given the lack of dangerous monsters in the area, the priority was to provide a moderate effect at a more affordable price. Recognizing that even tourists favored affordable options, he decided to prioritize the price-quality ratio, refining his process to offer the best value possible. Rolling up his sleeves and humming a soft tune, the hero gathered yarrow, eggplant leaves, and cedar vines to craft a healing potion, eventually adding a sunstone to bolster his mana reserves. As he began brewing, he set out to disassemble the ingredients, a process entirely dependent on his level of skill. While basic grinding was simple, materials with complex structures or high mana density proved far more difficult to break down. The adventurer then placed the ingredients into a mortar, infusing them with mana as he ground the mixture into a smooth paste. Though he lacked the necessary spell, he could still infuse objects with mana through direct touch. After mixing the herbal paste and sunstone into water, he simmered the brew slowly, stirring it continuously to ensure the energy was distributed evenly. After simmering the mixture for an hour, he poured the cooled liquid into small vials and used his appraisal skill, noting that the potion's quality depended on both the condition of the ingredients and his mana control during the brewing process. Crafting a superior potion depended on using high-quality ingredients and carefully regulating the mana flow. Balancing these specific variables was the true test of one's mixing expertise. Trusting his technique, the protagonist performed the procedure once more with complete confidence. By once again incorporating various additives, Gran successfully produced another batch of high-quality potions. He tirelessly experimented with new ingredients, never pausing his work in the kitchen. Hoping to make the most of his catch, the young man decided to prepare a snack using the monster's meat. While a typical snake's bones are often a hassle, this creature's massive size meant there were no small bones to worry about. Even so, butchering the giant carcass was a grueling process. Once the meat was cleaned, he seasoned it generously with salt, pepper, and thyme. After seasoning the food, he prepared a breading mixture by combining flour, an egg, and a pinch of salt. He also incorporated a secret ingredient, opening his inventory with a simple wave of his hand. After pulling out a bottle and taking a sip from his mug, the hero realized the drink would have been better enjoyed alongside the main course. He also made a mental note that for a crispier crust, he should have added ale and whisked the batter more thoroughly. Deciding to prepare a side dish, the adventurer pulled out some potatoes and began slicing them. He opted to slice the potatoes with the skins intact for a better eating experience, soaking the pieces in water as he prepared the oil for frying. After straining the potatoes, the young man dredged the meat in flour before dipping it into the batter. With the oil finally at the ideal temperature, it was time to begin frying the small portions of dough. The delicious aroma was the perfect appetizer, the kind that practically called for another mug of ale. He decided to fry some potato slices as well, watching with satisfaction as the batter gradually turned golden. In high spirits, the hero hummed a tune while he cooked. He concluded that everything was finally in order, exactly as it should be. The meal sizzled and glistened appetizingly, and he soon realized it wasn't fish, but a substantial snack. He helped himself to a large portion and began preparing the sauce to go with it. Picking up his chopsticks to sample the meal, he quickly realized the food was still scalding hot as it burned his lips. The young man noted the delicate, slightly fishy flavor, finding that the subtle saltiness perfectly complemented the dense meat and the rich, addictive broth. Dipping it in vinegar provided a sharp, delightful aftertaste that paired perfectly with a glass of ale. As he took a sip, the hero realized he had found the ideal opening and turned his focus toward the plate. Under a bright, sunlit sky, the protagonist made his way to Kersia's home, where she welcomed him warmly, clearly delighted by his visit. The young man greeted her and revealed he had already prepared the fresh potions, surprising Kersia, who remembered they had only discussed the request the day before. Deciding to inspect the batch inside, they allowed him to lead the way. Stepping inside, he greeted Alicia as she busied herself with work in the kitchen. After greeting Gran, he explained that he'd brought a potion, though Alicia was surprised by the sheer quantity and asked if he had any more in stock. He explained that he had prepared the entire batch the previous day, noting that because the ingredients were all locally sourced, They were easy to acquire. Alicia remarked that their exceptional quality would surely give them an advantage. Estimating that the potion would last about a week, the hero agreed to supply the same amount by then, while the girl promised to finalize the payment and instructed Kersia to prepare the shop for opening. Meanwhile, the protagonist placed his dish on the table, explaining he had prepared a special treat during his free time that remained fresh, thanks to his preservation skill. Kersia was caught off guard to find that Gran had prepared the dish himself, and Gran quickly encouraged everyone to have a taste. Taking a bite, she beamed with satisfaction, evidently enjoying the flavor. After notifying Gran that the payment was ready, Alicia was caught off guard when she was invited to sample the freshly prepared meal. Upon tasting the meal, she complimented the flavors, prompting Kirsch to mention Gran's impressive cooking skills as she correctly identified the meat as fish. Interrupting her, the young man revealed that the meal was actually rock python meat, causing the girls to freeze in surprise. After taking a closer look at the dish, they confessed they never expected snake to be so delicious, as they had originally mistaken it for fish. The hero explained that he had prepared the meal using leftovers, and since it turned out surprisingly delicious, Gran offered to share it with the rest of the group. Additionally, he required a larger cauldron and several small potion vials, so he inquired if the store had them available. Kersia confirmed they offered several varieties at a discounted rate and asked if the arrangement was acceptable, to which Alicia agreed, expressing her desire for their continued partnership. The heroes convened to deliberate on their next steps and began making preparations for the upcoming trade. The protagonist's home was situated right at the threshold of an expansive forest, with both locals and adventurers avoiding the dense thicket. Its contents remained a mystery, especially since the lack of formidable monsters made it an unprofitable destination for those seeking fortune. Finding an abundance of plant life nearby, the hero moved along the path to harvest the necessary materials. Upon reaching a wide clearing, he was caught off guard by the unexpected presence of a unicorn. Gran realized that despite its majestic appearance, the creature was actually quite ferocious. As the unicorn thrashed its hooves in the water, its true nature revealed itself. It was drawn only to virgins, while becoming violently aggressive toward anyone else, ready to strike with its sharp horn. Regarded as a formidable creature, the unicorn suddenly turned on the boy, aiming its horn directly at him. By activating one of his skills, the protagonist surged through several levels, proving that even a creature as formidable as a unicorn can be defeated with ease if approached correctly. With a single, calculated swing of his blade, Gran successfully severed the creature's horn. He suddenly slumped as his strength failed him, allowing the man to finally breathe a sigh of relief. A unicorn stripped of its horn is indistinguishable from an ordinary white horse until a new one grows back. Despite the hero's assumption that only weak monsters inhabited this forest, it turns out that even unicorns can be found here. The young man used his appraisal skill on the trophy, discovering that the unicorn horn was a precious ingredient for high-level potions and universal elixirs. Taking in the scenic views, Gran stretched and decided it was time to stop for a rest. Earlier, the protagonist had introduced his friends to the Abacus and taught them the fundamentals of how to use it. Under the midday sun, the boy settled onto the ground and poured himself some milk, humming a quiet melody as he began unpacking his supplies. The moment he began his meal, he realized a goat was standing right behind him. Caught completely off guard, Gran realized the beast was now right in front of him. Paralyzed with fear, he let out a shaky breath, his entire body trembling as he wondered how they had managed to sneak up on him so quietly. As the hero offered the hamburger, the creature quickly and skillfully snatched it from his grasp. The goat swallowed it in a single gulp and immediately began chewing at a rapid pace. The protagonist examined the meat, concluding that it was likely venison. Grant decided to sample the meal himself as the ferocious beast looked on in complete confusion. Letting out a weary sigh, he explained that he had finally run out of food. Suddenly, the goat stood up and moved away with purpose, leaning its body forward. Filled with confusion, the young man watched as the beast's horns suddenly began to detach. Grand froze, unsure if this was a natural occurrence, and decided to stay back and observe the situation. As the hero approached the severed horn, the beast began scanning its surroundings as if searching for something. But before it could react, fresh horns sprouted in place of the old ones, and the creature opened its muzzle. Mistaking the goat for the legendary master of the forest, the young man was captivated by its horns, which he recognized as premium materials for potions and amulets. He thanked the creature, delighted that his walk had resulted in such high-quality finds, even though the beast was actually just a chamois. A short while later, the young man picked up a hoe and began working the soil in the garden. Gran balanced his routine by brewing and delivering potions to Kersia's shop while also making time to tend his garden plot. After securing the required grains, he set to work planting them in the earth. Exhausted from the effort, he paused to wipe the sweat from his brow. Surveying the complete mess inside the storage room, Grant utilized his magic to fully repair and reorganize the warehouse. Despite the heavy workload, the boy never remained idle, constantly splitting wood or keeping the place tidy. He found genuine fulfillment in this disciplined routine, as every task brought him a sense of peace and purpose. Inside the meticulously clean warehouse, he constructed a smokehouse for preserving food and stored the meat he planned to cure into prosciutto. After slicing the meat into manageable portions, he seasoned the pieces with a rub of salt, pepper, a touch of sugar, and finely chopped herbs. To finish, he pressed the meat firmly to ensure the juices remained locked deep within the fibers. Under normal conditions, the meat would require a curing period lasting anywhere from a day to 2 weeks, but he opted to use his storage facility to accelerate the process. After taking a moment to reflect on the situation, he retrieved the salted meat and carefully washed the excess salt from its surface. Afterward, the finished product was submerged in a barrel of water. After the soaking process concluded, he removed and dried the meat before applying his special skill. Once the surface moisture had evaporated, he hung the pieces in the smokehouse to smoke for several hours. As smoke drifted from the stove, he began preparing the evening meal. After laying out their required ingredients, Gran sliced the black buffalo tongue into 2-centimeter cubes and let them marinate in pureed onions for 15 minutes. 15 minutes later, the meat was added to boiling water for a quick cook before being seasoned with salt and pepper to let the flavors fully absorb. In the meantime, he began heating oil and garlic in a deep saucepan, adding the finely chopped onions once the aroma peaked and stirring them steadily over a low flame. The hero noticed an inviting scent as it began to waft through the entire kitchen. Gran explained that once the onions are finished frying, he adds the peeled tomatoes. After mashing the tomatoes and letting them soften over the heat, he added the red wine and brought the mixture to a boil before turning his attention back to the main course. Seasoning the diced tongue with salt and pepper, he seared the pieces to a golden brown before adding them to the pot along with some mushrooms. After closing the lid, he let the food simmer over low heat, periodically adding water to prevent it from burning. The boy eagerly anticipated the upcoming meal as the rich aroma began to fill the entire house and the neighborhood beyond. As time passed, steam began to drift from the smoker, signaling that the meat was finally ready. The hero decided to sample one leg immediately while placing the other into cold storage, as he took great satisfaction in building up a long-term food supply. After locking up the warehouse, the boy was startled to find a goat observing him. Its presence was unsettling. While he knew the repellent fence was useless against powerful monsters, it was even more concerning that the magical detectors hadn't been triggered at all. Skeptical of its status, the boy wondered if this was truly a high-ranking monster, only for the goat to activate its storage skill. A cascade of herbs, rare materials, and vegetables rained down around the creature, all of which were presented to the hero as an offering. Mesmerized by the glowing materials, Grant asked the goat if he could have them, and the creature surprisingly nodded in agreement. However, he couldn't tell if the animal expected a trade or was simply looking for a snack. Determined not to finish the entire meal himself, he decided to cook an extra portion, and soon a fragrant new dish sat ready on the table. Both the hero and the goat accepted the treat with sincere appreciation. The young man explained that the goat was a common breed from his homeland, representing a gesture of gratitude for life and sustenance. Understanding this, the goat nodded and prepared to eat. Lowering his muzzle for a cautious taste, his eyes widened in surprise, and he began devouring the meal until the bowl was licked clean, clearly delighted by the expertly prepared dish. After the boy mentioned they had more than enough food to spare, the goat decided to give it another try. The young man took a bite, sampling the piece of meat. He shuddered and exhaled from the heat as the tender, braised tongue melted in his mouth, revealing a deep, savory beef flavor. The long simmering had tempered the tomato's acidity, causing its sharp sweetness to subside into a more balanced profile. By omitting any broth or heavy sauces, he allowed the natural flavors of the ingredients to take center stage. The hero was thoroughly impressed with the quality of the meal, while the goat continued eating and eagerly asked for seconds. The young man offered a smile, finding that despite his companion's monstrous nature, the two of them shared a remarkably pleasant rapport at the table. With the pot nearly half empty, the boy offered the goat some wine to follow their meal, asking him to wait a moment while he fetched some appetizers. For the first time, everything seemed to be going right as he retrieved the meat. Yet the mystery of what lay inside remained until the new dish was finally presented on the table. The young man offered the plate to the goat, who stood frozen in confusion for a moment before tentatively poking its nose into the dish. In an instant, the hero finally realized what the creature was truly seeking. After sharing a quick toast, they settled in to enjoy their meal. After inquiring about the flavor, the young man decided to try a piece for himself. Grant took a small bite, his eyes widening as he recognized the flavor of dry, cured meat, which he found surprisingly delicious. They sat down to enjoy the wine and savory meat together, skewering each bite with their forks while the goat joined in, tossing its food and bobbing its horns. The heroes took the opportunity to celebrate, enjoying a hearty meal and each other's company. As morning broke, a delicious aroma filled the house while the protagonist stood at the stove frying eggs, taking a moment to stretch and shake off the last of his sleep. Just as the young man poured himself a cup of coffee, the sound of the doorbell interrupted him, making him wonder who his visitor could be. Gran questioned whether the item was a chamois, as he recalled the events that had unfolded the previous day. A mysterious silhouette suddenly appeared outside his window, causing the young man to freeze in fear. When the boy asked to come inside, the protagonist began to tremble at the sight of the stranger standing on his threshold. The stranger rebuked him for his sudden disappearance, calling it heartless to leave without a word, while Gran welcomed Abel and asked what he was looking for. After he explained that he had come looking for a meal, the young man countered by pointing out that the place wasn't a diner. Declaring that he had found exactly what he came for, Abel activated his magic and conjured a bag from his hands. She lost her balance and tumbled to the ground. Collapsing onto the object, the young man asked for an explanation of what it was. Abel clarified that he had finally found exactly what he'd been searching for. It turned out the bag was filled with rice. Curious, the boy questioned where his friend could have acquired such a thing. He then admitted that he hadn't even eaten breakfast yet. Gran stood trembling with a massive portion of rice in his hands, announcing that breakfast was served and inviting his companion to sit. Abel didn't hesitate for a second, gladly accepting the meal. While the hero made sure to feed his companion, his real priority was uncovering exactly where Abel had managed to get the rice. As the adventurers continued their meal, they found themselves reminiscing about the exceptional dishes the protagonist had prepared. Tranquility filled Grant's home as he questioned his friend about the source of the rice. Abel explained that he had discovered it within a dungeon, leaving the hero puzzled as he tried to identify which one he was referring to. The boy explained that upon opening the chest he found sacks of provisions that were entirely edible, identifying them as the same white grain Gran had been searching for. The chest was filled with various culinary ingredients, and he soon learned that even the demons here were considered edible. Surprised by this revelation, the protagonist began to question the true nature of the dungeon. His companion explained that while salt and spices were abundant on the lower tiers, the area could only be reached by ship. Gran inquired if they had a boat compatible with Ariel's spatial magic, and while Abel confirmed it was possible, he warned that the vessel would be at high risk of being destroyed by large monsters. Although a port was initially planned, logistical hurdles and rising costs stalled negotiations, allowing the dungeon to remain a reliable source of valuable ingredients. Gran paused as he took in the massive stockpile of rare ingredients, stunned that such a valuable location had remained completely overlooked by everyone else. Abel suspected their current predicament stemmed from their habit of consuming everything they acquired. Sitting at the table, the hero asked for the dungeon's location, and his comrade noted it was situated near the town of Ulta Botanical. Utilizing teleportation magic allowed them to arrive quickly, but the boy questioned the urgency, as he felt it was more important to first establish a base of operations near his home. Intrigued by the prospect of a dungeon filled with food, Grant resolved to visit once he had settled in, but first, he inquired about purchasing some rice. With a bashful smile, Abel explained that the hero had vanished while he was away from the capital, noting that his comrades frequently disappeared in groups for long periods. Since the protagonist had simply smiled and left without any warning, Bull considered the whole situation rather improper. His companion voiced his frustration over not knowing where he had been, leaving the man stunned and at a loss for words. Pausing for a moment, he asked how Bell had managed to track him down, only to learn that Grant's spatial storage backpack was the key. Upon handing it over, he felt certain it wouldn't be lost, having taken steps to ensure it would always remain within his sight. Gran was taken aback, suspecting he'd been followed, but his friend dismissed the concern by claiming he just wanted to sample the food, though his true reasons went deeper than a simple meal. Despite not knowing how to cook it yet, Grant completed the rice delivery to return their favor. Abel, appearing to be a truly kind man, smiled at the prospect of tasting a rice dish in the future. Knowing he could teleport back at any second, the group decided to return and gather what food they could, eventually agreeing that catching fish from the mountain lakes would be their best strategy. Abel explained that because his magic allowed for an easy return home, staying for a while wouldn't be an issue. He then offered a generous payment to rent a spare room, catching the young hero completely off guard. By the following day, the heroes had gathered at the house in the forest, where Grand suddenly cried out, unable to make sense of the situation. As it turns out, Abel had made some minor adjustments, prompting the hero to ask where he had acquired all of these items. They informed him that these items were the only remnants of a bandit gang they had recently defeated. Gran was taken aback that he had managed to accomplish so much in just a single day. Noticing the messy state of Grant's home, the hero applied cleansing and anti-degradation spells to tidy it up. Although the boy was grateful, he worried about the effort required for such magic, but the hero simply suggested he could pay him back with a meal. Gran didn't mind the plan, but he noted that he'd need some time to prepare the rice, prompting the hero to ask how his friend actually intended to cook it. He explained that his technique wasn't exactly conventional cooking, but rather a specialized method of manipulating water. The hero inquired if they were planning to prepare one of the unusual dishes he often mentioned. Gran explained that he had learned the recipes from a merchant who had once looked after him, leading the boy to ask where that merchant was from. Although he was supposedly from the east, the man never saw him again to confirm it, and Gran knew he had to keep his past life memories a secret from his friend. The hero then set about preparing some rice. She resolved to herself that her work would now center around rice. He began reciting the recipe aloud, detailing how he would first wash the rice thoroughly before grinding it for a full hour. He made a mental note of how much he truly enjoyed the process of working with rice. Using a single hand, he began to meticulously wash the rice in the bowl. Once finished, he proceeded to drain every last drop of water. Repeating the action, he poured more water into the bowl of rice. Next, he needed to submerge the item in water for a thorough cleaning. After pulling up the control console to find the correct setting, he noticed the option for large boar meat and assumed the ingredients would already be ground up. Retrieving the pot, he reminisced about the times he had cooked tonkatsu for the group, a dish that Abel particularly enjoyed. He then set the rice on the stove to begin cooking. He prepared the dish using a selection of pork tenderloin, onions, Japanese parsley, okara, wheat flour, oyster sauce, and eggs. As the kelp broth simmered, the hero thinly sliced the onions and began heating the oil. As the meal was being prepared, the hero noted that seaweed from his former life would be the perfect ingredient for the broth. Gran began by using shoulder meat as his base, seasoning it simply with salt and pepper. He proceeded to coat the meat in flour, dip it into the egg wash, and finally roll it in the breadcrumbs. Following this, he dropped the meat into the sizzling oil. A savory aroma soon began to drift through the entire kitchen. Suddenly, a timer to his right began to ring. With the rice already finished, it was time to turn up the heat. To the hero, the combination of aromatic rice and succulent fried meat was simply irresistible. Once the meat turned a perfect golden brown, the hero carefully drained away the excess oil. At this point, he was finally given the chance to test it out for himself. While slicing the meat, he decided it would be wiser to remain patient for the time being. He then proceeded to add the broth, soy sauce, sugar, and sake into the pan. All that remained was to add the onions and finish the cooking process. Once the onions have softened, the tonkatsu is added, followed by the whisked eggs. He then covered the pot with a lid, allowing the dish to cook for another 30 seconds. With that settled, the hero went to check on the progress of the rice. The enticing aroma of the rice was so pleasant that it immediately made the hero's mouth water. Feeling that it wouldn't be the same without Donberry, he prepared to handle everything on his own, just as a man unexpectedly entered his kitchen. Gran mentioned that everything was nearly set, while his companion explained he'd only just returned from a walk to build up an appetite. The hero announced that it was finally time for their evening meal. He set the dish on the table and explained that it was katsudon, a meal of tonkatsu served over rice, before inviting his friend to try it. Abel simply replied that he had no intention of asking. Grain remarked that the katsudon looked quite appetizing, and found it much more comfortable to eat while holding the bowl in his hands. His friend echoed his words. Following the preparations, he finally sampled the dish for the first time. Abel relished the meal and loudly praised its flavor, only for Gran to interject and remind him that conversation was strictly forbidden during mealtime. Having never tried anything like it before, he found the unfamiliar flavor to be surprisingly delicious. Abel noted that the savory soy sauce and a hint of sweetness complemented each other perfectly. Gran gazed at the mage standing before him, his expression filled with pride. Afterward, he took a moment to taste his own cooking, thoroughly enjoying the result. The hero reflected on how perfectly the savory tonkatsu complemented the natural sweetness of the rice. The hero remarked that although fried food is great on its own, pairing it with rice makes the meal truly exceptional. Abel found the sauce's flavor peculiar, realizing it was unlike anything he had ever encountered before. Gran clarified that the substance was actually soy sauce brought in from a foreign land. The hero claimed he had stumbled upon the sauce by accident at the camp, admitting he knew next to nothing about it other than its supposed origins in an eastern land. Reflecting on the eastern nation, Abel decided it was best to let his companions draw their own conclusions about the situation. He then noted that their supply of the sauce was running low, suggesting they should try to buy a bit more. Abel suddenly leaped from his seat to ask about the sauce's origin in the land east of Cylinder, to which Gran noted that the rice had also been sourced from that same location. A consistent supply of rice and soy sauce would allow them to expand their production significantly. For instance, they could use those ingredients to create sake and diversify their menu, leaving Abel to question how such a process was even possible. The hero explained that the same ingredients could produce vastly different results depending on the seasonings and cooking methods used. Meanwhile, Abel remained convinced that the country was located to the east, while Gran noted that he had heard in Obolo that the items were purchased from a merchant aboard a foreign trade ship that had recently docked in the city. The magician explained that Obalo is situated in the eastern region of Cylinder. If the delivery involves sauce and rice, teleportation magic could be utilized to cover part of the journey. He eagerly asked if they had enough tofu, rice, and miso to prepare a variety of meals, and Gran assured him that he could count on their supplies. Abel confidently declared that he would eventually reach his destination, though he acknowledged it wouldn't be happening anytime soon. Gran responded, expressing his firm belief in him. The magician then questioned if the hero fully grasped the price he would demand in exchange for the delivery. Remaining unfazed, the hero replied that he would prepare a high-quality meal for both of them. He felt content for the time being, knowing he had secured an ally with such immense magical power. The hero confidently stated that butchering carcasses was where he truly felt at home. He set to work butchering the meat from one of the animals. Granix noted that while Grinlich appeared small, the butchering process would still take half a day, proving the task was much more difficult in practice than it was in theory. As it turns out, Albert had provided these materials as a substitute for his rent and meals. Spread out before him were the remains of the lethal bird, the black buffalo, and most notably, the defeated Green Lake. After single-handedly transporting all the materials to the warehouse, the hero questioned whether Abel truly considered such a task to be a simple stroll. She explained that the nearest town was quite a distance away. Abel was stationed at the base of the eastern mountain for a black buffalo hunt, only to be interrupted by Green Lake's sudden arrival. Grant noted the lack of a proper walking path, but the girl explained that since she had visited the location before, she could simply teleport them there. She entrusted the remaining matters to Grant. He commented on her lack of restraint, but she had already vanished. Fortunately, the quality of these materials guaranteed they would walk away with some exceptional meat. The process of carving the meat took quite some time, and by the time he finished, the sun had already begun to set. Every part of a dragon is remarkably useful, leaving nothing to waste. Their blood and organs are processed into high-quality potions, while their horns and scales are crafted into durable equipment. Additionally, they yield massive magic stones, and even their meat is edible. Grand realized that with such an abundance of meat, he could create a vast array of different dishes and products. The heroes set off once more, marking the beginning of a brand new adventure. The following day, Gran occupied himself with map-making, fulfilling a standard responsibility for any adventurer. The map clearly highlighted the specific areas for gathering resources and tracking down monsters. This approach streamlines the search process while helping them steer clear of any hazardous areas. With his search skill providing an intuitive grasp of the terrain, Gran found the task of cartography to be effortless. From his perspective, the forest appeared incredibly vast. He figured that the Adventurers Guild in Emona likely sold maps, though they would probably only cover territories that had already been charted. While conducting his research, Gran gathered various herbs along the way. He also took the time to observe the natural world around him. Knowing the area is crawling with dangerous monsters, he begins mapping the territory himself. He eventually made his way back to the exact spot where he had last seen the unicorn. Gran had spent a considerable amount of time mapping the area, noting that a direct path would take about 90 minutes to reach a location he deemed perfect for a base camp. The hero marked the location on his map, keeping it in mind as a place to return to if the situation ever called for it. He then decided to venture further into the depths of the forest. Believing the forest monsters might yield valuable materials or rare herbs, Gran ventured further inside, a decision he would soon come to regret. Without warning, a sharp howl echoed through the forest. Reacting quickly, he leaped back just as a sudden attack struck the spot where he had been standing. A massive creature loomed ahead, regarding the hero with unmistakable hostility. The adventurer reacted with precision, skillfully parrying the monster's incoming strikes. Every time the hero severed a part of the predator, he noticed a new limb immediately sprouting to take its place. The creature was a Veloci Trent, a monster species that resembles a tree, leading the hero to recall the common saying that the best place to hide one is within a forest. These creatures excel at masking their presence, and by the time you realize one is nearby, you're likely already surrounded by an entire horde of treants. Gran now found himself in this exact predicament, stranded deep within a dense forest where other adventurers rarely set foot. Lured by the abundance of medicinal herbs growing in the area, he eventually wandered into this location. Gran clarified that, individually, a Trent Velux isn't considered a particularly formidable opponent. However, even the most capable adventurer will eventually succumb to fatigue when faced with such overwhelming numbers. Before long, their group continued to expand as more monsters joined their ranks. He made it his mission to eliminate every last one of them. Realizing he couldn't handle the situation on his own, he decided that retreating was the safest course of action. As he began to walk away, a brilliant beam of light suddenly materialized in his path. Gran sprinted through the dense thicket. Before long, he came to the realization that he had completely lost his way. He finally spoke up, signaling that he had gained a clear understanding of his current surroundings. After climbing a tree to survey the area, Gran was struck by the sheer scale of the forest, which was significantly larger than he had initially believed. Spotting a city in the distance, the adventurer realized that following the river downstream would lead him straight to it. Evidently, the forest only grew denser the further they traveled upstream. He questioned whether he was looking at a massive cluster of trees or a hill, as the scale far exceeded that of a simple grove. As he ventured deeper, the forest grew increasingly dense and imposing, its thickets greeting him with a palpable sense of hostility. This was a primal wilderness, a place where no human had ever set foot. Gran leaped down from the branches of the tree. Suddenly, he caught sight of something positioned directly in his path. An adorable animal suddenly peeked out from the bushes, catching the hero off guard as he hadn't expected to find it living there. He approached the man and inquired about the way forward. To show his gratitude, he promised to treat the animal to a proper dinner. As the hero arrived back at his house, he found Abel waiting there to welcome him home. She explained that the monster fence had proven ineffective, prompting her to reinforce it against more powerful threats. Combined with a long-standing barrier, this ensured that only she and Gran could gain entry unless they chose to let someone in. Upon seeing the creature, Abel was stunned it had managed to breach her reinforced defenses, though Gran clarified that the monster had only followed him in hopes of finding something good to eat. Abel suspected that the hero had started associating with the monster. The hero explained that he lived in solitude and found the monster to be a pleasant companion, leading Abel to realize just how deeply lonely the man truly was. The adventurer informed his guests that he was beginning dinner preparations and asked them to wait patiently. An uncomfortable silence settled between Abel and the monster as they stood side by side. Grant chose green lake meat as the primary ingredient for today's menu. With the cabbage, venison, garlic, and other key ingredients already prepped, the dish was set for a quick preparation. The process began by boiling the cabbage until tender and separating the leaves to drain, while the onions were finely chopped and sautéed in butter until translucent before being left to cool. Meanwhile, the hero begins mincing Green Lake's flesh, as dragon meat is typically quite lean and dense. Since using only the green meat would have been far too rich, he balanced the mixture by adding and blending in a third of standard livestock meat. He then added fried onions, eggs, and breadcrumbs to the bowl, seasoning the mixture with pepper, salt, and nutmeg, before giving it all another thorough mix. He divided the prepared minced meat into portions, carefully shaping them into balls. Gran noted how skillfully he was now handling his tasks, finding that even the simple act of eating had become much more convenient. The hero proceeded to wrap the minced meat in softened cabbage leaves, securing each bundle with a strip of bacon. Gran spent a moment weighing his options between meat or vegetable broth, eventually deciding on the latter to make use of his leftover onion and cabbage scraps. All that remained was to let the dish simmer before finishing it off with a final seasoning of salt and pepper. Grant called out to Abel, letting her know dinner was prepared and asking for her help to bring out the meal. Realizing their guest from the forest was far too large to fit inside the house, the hero decided they should have dinner outdoors instead. Once the table was prepared, Grant brought out the meal to serve his guests. He served Darko cabbage rolls alongside some wine, prompting Abel to compliment the wonderful aroma and ask if the dish was made of vegetables. Considering the meal of green lake meat and cabbage leaves, the hero felt Abel would enjoy it, while the grower remarked that Gran had never been served a bad dish. The heroes settled in and began their meal. Grant sliced into the cabbage rolls, noting how the rich aroma and savory juices seemed to overflow with every bite. At long last, he finally took his first bite of the meal. He took great satisfaction in the meal he had prepared for himself. He found the minced dragon meat delicious, noting its rich flavor and dense texture as the potent aroma immediately overwhelmed his senses. The addition of meat beast protein kept the flavor from becoming dull, making it easy to eat indefinitely. This sparked his curiosity about the potential of using pure dragon meat, leading him to make a note to experiment with that ingredient in the future. After the forest companion finished his entire meal, Gran decided to fetch him another serving. Abel was thrilled by the exceptional quality of the dish. She realized that he had wrapped the meat in vegetables to lock in the juices, remarking that the way the flavors dissolved was truly incredible. The broth, infused with the subtle sweetness of the juice, creates a rich depth of flavor that makes it impossible to stop eating. Abel cried out, demanding more. She soon realized that the forest monster possessed a remarkably greedy appetite. Grant spoke up in his defense, noting that since everything had turned out fine, the details no longer mattered. The girl expressed that as long as Grana was satisfied with the outcome, she was content as well. The creature remained unsatisfied and demanded even more. She further clarified that this wasn't something expected to happen in the near future. Once her current tasks are finished, she plans to head toward Eastern Silrande, following Gran's suggestion. The hero was thrilled by the news, but she soon explained the limitations of her ability. She could only teleport to cities she had already visited. This meant they would still need to rely on horses or the train to reach the outskirts, so the final leg of the journey would still take some time. Given the country's vast scale, reaching its furthest borders by stagecoach would take nearly a month, but since she's never visited these areas, she plans to use the journey to expand her teleportation network. Gran responded by assuring her that she would receive the payment in its entirety. To her, payment represented the security of food and shelter, while he promised to craft her superior gear if he could secure the necessary materials. The hero admitted he was only taking notes, explaining that as a hobbit, he wasn't likely to achieve anything remarkable. When the girl asked about his ability to enchant items, He revealed that it depended on the material, as he was unable to work with gear dropped in high-level dungeons. Sarandal arrived shortly after, driven by her own curiosity about the region's local cuisine. Despite his preference for working alone, the hero has grown significantly closer to rice. When the forest beast began demanding more food, Abel refused, noting that the creature was already overindulging. Drawing from his past life's memories, Gran felt that even in this new world, a morning cup of black coffee remained an essential ritual. In this world, he maintained a consistent routine of starting every morning with a cup of coffee before addressing any major tasks. Sipping his coffee, he felt his mind clear and his energy return, leaving him ready to take on the next challenge. Growing up, he never understood how anyone could stomach such a bitter drink. Yet he eventually found himself picking up the habit without a second thought. Eventually, he found himself growing accustomed to that lingering taste in everything he consumed. He remembered his routine of enjoying a cup of coffee, a habit that spanned from his early mornings to his frequent breaks throughout the workday. Though he initially preferred his coffee with plenty of sugar and milk, he slowly cut back until he began drinking it black to fully appreciate its natural bitterness. Grant couldn't deny that the drink's strength was addictive, but he noticed this local coffee only resembled his usual brew in color. Although the flavor was entirely different, it still managed to evoke a lingering sense of familiarity. As he took a sip of his beverage, Abel inquired whether it was herbal tea. He took note of the drink's strikingly vivid color. Grant confirmed that it was indeed tea, explaining that he had prepared it by boiling the roots of popo sprouts. The hero noted that this tea sharpens his focus and restores his vitality, effectively clearing away any lingering morning grogginess. Abel questioned if the beverage was being brewed from the yellow popo flowers that grew abundantly throughout the region. He explained that while the flower was quite common, its trace amounts of magic made it a viable ingredient for brewing potions. Abel confessed that he had never before heard of the popo flower being used as an ingredient for potions. The adventurer then offered him a taste of the drink, despite its slightly bitter flavor. The magician found the drink to be completely distasteful. Furthermore, he noticed the beverage carried a distinct earthy flavor. He was taken aback by the hero's calm demeanor while drinking it. He responded by explaining that his actions were simply a matter of habit. He mentioned that adding milk and sugar made the drink much more palatable, then suggested adding a bit more before giving it a taste. While the magician appreciated the improved flavor, he couldn't ignore the drink's underlying bitterness. The hero noted that the flower itself was quite harsh, leading the girl to suggest that this very quality might be what made the beverage so refreshing. The magician questioned him, curious about how he had come up with the idea of brewing tea from it. When questioned if a strength recovery potion could be crafted from the beverage, Graniamu admitted he had already considered the idea and was attempting to brew something similar. By utilizing silver as a catalyst, the reaction produced a restorative effect on the body. While the effect temporarily numbs his exhaustion, it eventually gives way to a sense of apathy, and the frequent use of silver carries the risk of toxic side effects. Abel pointed out the risks of using such a common weed, suggesting they could instead market it as a body enhancement potion by glossing over its side effects. Sensing the potential danger, Grant spoke up for the first time, explaining that the popo flower is an unconventional ingredient rarely considered for potion making. Abel never suspected that a seemingly mundane plant could possess such potent, performance-enhancing properties. The adventurer noted that the ingredients needed for potions could typically be found in the surrounding area. In Gran's absence, daily life felt hollow, and even the food seemed to lose its flavor. After finishing his meal, Abel set off to fulfill the commission sent by the capital's Mages Guild. He prepared to follow through with his daily routine of gathering materials for his potions. Before proceeding, the hero focused on finishing the cookies to enjoy alongside a cup of coffee brewed from popo flower roots. He gathered butter, sugar, eggs, and flour to begin his preparation. He began by whisking the softened butter, then incorporated the sugar, continuing to mix until the batter was smooth and had turned a rich yellow. Next, he incorporated the yolks and gave the dough another thorough mix. He sampled the flour's flavor as he added it to the mixture. Next, he began to meticulously knead the dough. After the flour is fully incorporated, Paul folds and kneads the dough several times before setting it aside to rest. As the dough rested, Gran preheated the oven, waiting 30 minutes before finally taking the dough out. Once he finished rolling the dough out on the board, he carefully divided it into uniform pieces. He then slid the tray of dough into a preheated brick oven, which utilized insulating materials and a fiery magic stone to maintain its heat. Grand allowed the cookies to bake for 15 minutes. Once the cookies were finished baking, they appeared quite ordinary. At that moment, the hero realized he had neglected to include a specific detail. He made this discovery during his routine task of gathering popo roots, promptly storing them as soon as they were collected. Noticing the sizable collection of berries he had gathered from the woods, he decided to turn them into jam. With the jam finally added, the cookies were officially complete. Grand prepared a batch of butter cookies, serving them with wild berry syrup. Noticing that a layer of jam significantly improved the cookie's presentation, the adventurer finally decided to taste his finished creation. Grand looked over his creation, feeling a sense of satisfaction with how the dish turned out. The cookie's sweetness paired perfectly with the tartness of the jam, creating a balanced flavor that wouldn't have been the same without it. Realizing Popo's coffee biscuits could use more sweetness, he decided to bake a special batch later and focused on finishing his tasks for the day. Today, he aimed to venture slightly past the lake to hunt monsters and gather herbs. Tucked away just behind his home lay a genuine treasure trove. Up until now, he hasn't crossed paths with any particularly powerful monsters. He efficiently transferred the remains of the defeated monsters into his storage. Walking through the unusually quiet surroundings, the hero felt himself finally begin to relax. The moment the thought crossed his mind, he suddenly found himself tumbling into a hole. Grant assumed he had stumbled upon some kind of monster's nest. Despite this, not a single soul was in sight. The magical presence was far too weak for this to be a dungeon. Up until now, he hadn't sensed any significant monster presences. Gran then chose to venture deeper into the cave to explore his surroundings. He began by reaching into his backpack to retrieve an item. Indeed, he had become nothing more than a quick snack. The hero was taken aback to see that not a single drop had spilled from the dish. He took his first bite, finally starting on the sandwich. Just then, he sensed someone watching him, though the gaze lacked any signs of aggression. He quickly assured the monsters that he had no desire to fight or disrupt their territory, explaining that he only wanted to search the cave before heading on his way. The cave's tiny inhabitants watched Gran with a sense of curiosity. The hero sandwich piqued his curiosity. After assessing the situation, the hero explained that he only had fresh produce and meat to offer, proposing a trade for a stone. These were the Mali beastmen, a race of subterranean creatures, one of whom was already expressing a desire for a delicious meal. Known for their speed and agility, these people are masters at refining underground ore into magical materials. Afterward, Gran offered the molas a batch of cookies he had freshly baked. One of the creatures leaned in to closely inspect the object before him. Following those events, he took a bite of the cookie. The flavor was so exceptional that the creature was visibly overcome with joy. Soon after, the surrounding moles crowded the hero, insisting on having a turn themselves. Gran distributed all of his cookies among his friends in the forest. He proposed a trade arrangement, offering to bring them supplies from the surface in exchange for their ore and magical plants, while also promising to fulfill any specific requests they might have. As a reward for the cookie, the beast presented the adventurer with a stone. Sure enough, Grant successfully caught him. Accessing the control console, he checked the data to identify the specific type of stone. The hero pointed out that this was far too high a price to pay for the stone. However, he provided them with some pepper while warning that opening it would cause them to sneeze. The beast was stunned that the adventurer would willingly part with a commodity as valuable as pepper. Gran explained that while the item was pricey, it could be found cheaper in distant lands. Since he had previously purchased pepper in bulk and had plenty left over, the hero decided it was the perfect solution. He informed them of his need for gems and stones for his enchantments, expressing his desire to establish a consistent trade agreement. The animals ultimately accepted the terms of the deal. Gran explained that since he had accidentally fallen into a hole and ended up there, he hadn't brought any special items with him. He planned to bring a different selection on his next visit, striking a deal where they would also have some ore prepared for him. Following the encounter, the hero introduced himself as a prominent man residing at the forest's edge above. The creature introduced himself, revealing that his name was Luba Mo. The adventurer reached out to request his help, and Mo accepted the gesture by taking his hand. Following the encounter, the animals guided the hero back out into the open. After returning to Earth, Grand decided it was time to head back, but a final glance at the pit reminded him that falling in without first strengthening his body would be fatal. Out of nowhere, he felt something brush against his clothing. It turned out to be his friend from the forest, prompting Grant to shout at him for the sudden scare. He noted how the chamois always seemed to appear without a sound or any detectable presence. The adventurer sensed that the situation was anything but natural. He reassured the chamois that he would keep the Moli settlements and the forest's depths a secret to prevent outsiders from intruding, only returning occasionally to trade materials. He added that while Abel might have something to say about the situation, there was no need for him to worry. Without warning, the chamois stomped its hoof firmly against the ground. Gran realized that chamois was the true master of the forest. While the hero sensed no hostility, he understood that his new friend was simply protecting its home from potential intruders. The areas where these creatures lived were likely rich in ore, and if humans discovered these veins, the resulting mining operations would surely drive them from their land. The beast acted as a guide, leading the hero deep into the heart of the forest. To avoid unnecessary friction with the other races, Gran chooses to trade peacefully to acquire the materials he needs. Dealing with the various races felt like a chore to him, as his only real desire was to live a quiet life free from any heavy responsibilities. Afterward, Grant informed his forest companion that he was heading home to prepare a meal and invited him to join him. Gran was caught off guard when Abel decided to tag along, despite the simple nature of his potion delivery. Although the magician was eager to witness the hero trade, the adventurer was determined to prevent a meeting between Abel and Alicia. Alternatively, a high-level mage makes travel effortless through the use of teleportation. In a flash, they were suddenly standing in the middle of the square. Gran greeted Alicia and shared what he had brought for the week, receiving a warm welcome from the children as Alicia thanked him for his visit the previous week. Peering past the hero, the girl noticed another figure and inquired about their identity. Gran explained that his roommate had been adamant about bringing him along, then proceeded to introduce his fellow adventurer, Abel. He personally showed the mage the sorrow shop, which is managed by the elder sister Alicia and her younger sister Kersia. Abel greeted the group, expressing his genuine pleasure at meeting them. The girls stood motionless, their eyes fixed on the chamois. Gran laid out his usual selection of healing, refreshing, and poisonous potions. He also presented his latest creations: a new vigor potion, an ointment for muscle fatigue, and an enhanced refreshment tonic that restores stamina while effectively suppressing drowsiness. Picking up one of the new items, Alicia explained that Granasan's potions were in high demand because of their impressive effectiveness. Gran quietly acknowledged to himself that he had developed a liking for Alicia. He presented her with the sample potion, an ointment designed to heal dry, cracked hands and various other skin issues. The girl expressed her sincere gratitude to the hero. She remarked on the ointment's unusually delicious scent, prompting Gran to explain that he had infused it with lavender flowers to give it a more pleasant aroma. He crafted the item using essential oil extracted from lavender, intending for it to provide a calming aromatherapy effect. Next, the hero presented distilled lavender water, suggesting it could be used as an effective skincare product. Alicia once again questioned the effectiveness of water for skincare, prompting the adventurer to acknowledge its popularity and resolve to craft a similar product for her. He noted that the water provided a moisturizing effect and recommended using it after washing, leading the girl to thank him again and promise to try it out that very day. Curious about the unfamiliar product, Abel asked the hero to share it, catching Gran off guard with his partner's unexpected interest in skincare. Admitting his curiosity for anything new, the magician expressed a clear interest in testing the hand ointment. Gran promised to prepare another batch of the ointment for him once they returned home. Abel was momentarily distracted, prompting Kersia to recall Gran's earlier inquiry about something he claimed would be highly useful. She announced that she was going to retrieve an item from the warehouse. Recognizing the challenge she faced, the hero stepped in to offer his assistance. She explained that her grandson's gift allowed her to lift heavy weights with ease, noting that she genuinely enjoyed the physical activity. Alicia assured him that she would handle the payment for the potions while Kersia was away. The young woman produced her instruments to begin the calculations. Stunned by the sight, Abel admitted he had never seen anything like it before, and questioned if such items were actually used in everyday life. She explained that her grandson had crafted a foreign calculation tool specifically for them, noting that it was far more efficient and convenient for managing their records. Abel shifted his focus toward Gran. Feeling awkward, the hero clarified that the device wasn't his original invention. He had simply copied the design from Eastern traders he'd encountered. Abel requested the creation of the tool and a lesson on its operation, leading the hero to question why he would need it if he wasn't a merchant. Grand claimed he could perform the calculations quickly without any assistance, but the magician responded by admitting his habit of wanting to possess anything new he encounters. Furthermore, if it streamlines the calculations, it will be equally beneficial for the officials. Kersia hurried over with a heavy roll in her hands, apologizing for its weight just as someone called out to Gran. By the following morning, she had already made her way to the market. Grand sat at a table covered with an assortment of enchanted accessories and various trinkets. Abel clarified that these items were no longer simple accessories, but actual magical devices. Yet, even after the potions were exchanged, the mage inexplicably continued to trail the hero. When an adventurer questioned a pipe that constantly leaked cold water, Grant explained he had simply combined a water magic stone with an insulation spell, prompting Abel to ask about a color-changing hairpin he'd previously mistaken for spy equipment. Grant anticipated that the local fashionistas would be impressed, especially since he had also developed a brooch designed to make a woman's figure appear slimmer. Abel questioned the actual necessity of the brooch, asking for the reasoning behind its creation. The protagonist finds himself concerned about the women who are focused on improving their appearance. Abel requested a replica of the brooch, though the man struggled to understand why he would even want one. The magician explained that finding the right buyer in the capital could earn him a fortune, as these materials were perfect for high-end jewelry stores serving the nobility. Grand felt his partner look down on him, which drove him to perform small acts of service for the common people instead. Abel argued that such accessories would inevitably draw the attention of merchants once noblewomen took an interest in them. To ensure Gran wasn't exploited, Abel planned to introduce him to a reputable guild, and even offered to handle the negotiations himself if the pressure proved too much. He questioned whether the hero registered his inventions with the trade guild, but knowing his roommate's habits, he realized the man likely procrastinated to avoid the tedious paperwork. Beyond that, Gran also spends his time crafting peculiar magical inventions. Abel concluded that he needed to visit the Magical Instruments Guild, so the mage prepared to teleport them with a plan to stop by the Merchant Guild as well, only for Gran to clarify that Eamon lacked a dedicated guild for magical instruments. Abel's expression shifted as a peculiar smile spread across his face. Having understood his companion's point, Grant allowed himself to be teleported to the capital to complete the necessary registration. Upon reaching the capital, Abel called out to Gran. The hero initially failed to notice that several clients had already arrived to see them. After offering a polite greeting, he noticed one of the girls was interested in a color-changing hair clip and suggested she try either the blonde one or any other color of her choice. She inquired if she could try it on for herself. Gran didn't hesitate to let her try on the magic item, allowing her to test it without any issues. The girl carefully secured the hairpin in her hair. Her hair color shifted in an instant, and after questioning whether the hairpin was truly worth 2 large silver coins, she concluded the price was a bit steep once he confirmed it. Grant explained that once the magic dissipates and the color fades, she can simply replenish the supply to continue using it before asking if she was satisfied with the golden hue. After the girl handed over the coins, he reciprocated by offering her a small gift in return. The hero handed her the skin-smoothing lotion, as he had already intended to leave it at Pachero's shop. Noticing her fondness for the lotion, he offered it to her as a gift, earning her sincere and delighted gratitude. Another girl also expressed interest in the hair clip capable of changing hair colors. When Gran asked about her favorite hair color, he mentioned that she would likely prefer strawberry blonde. He confirmed that he could handle the request and applied a touch of magic to the hairpin. Following their interaction, he asked her to try on the color. Delighted with her new appearance, she questioned whether it truly cost an additional 2 large silver coins. Gran confirmed her assessment and offered her the same gift he had presented to the girl before. After seeing the customer off, he failed to notice a young girl nearby who was keeping a close eye on his stall. The capital's marketplace was bustling with a massive crowd of people. Abruptly, the hero turned to Abel and sharply questioned whether he was currently occupied. The mage explained that he had nowhere else to turn, though Gran was so preoccupied with his work that he barely noticed. Meanwhile, Abel stood behind the counter and expressed how much of a help the mage had been, adding that he was welcome to grab food from the refrigerator whenever he felt hungry. When his roommate asked if he wanted to get something to eat, Gran replied that he still had a little bit of work left to finish. Abel finally voiced a long-standing curiosity, asking how the adventurer had managed to imbue such a small silver item with so many enchantments. Gran explained that he was simply performing his routine enchantments. The mage remained skeptical, reasoning that if the silver piece truly was mithril, such a small amount should have structurally collapsed under the immense strain of so many enchantments. Gran then recalled incorporating gold into the hairpin, along with a drop of liquid missile on the back. This combination allowed for a more sophisticated enchantment than ordinary silver could handle, leaving Abel completely unfamiliar with the substance the hero mentioned. Gran was about to correct his partner when a girl suddenly approached their table and identified him as the person she was looking for. Overcome with embarrassment, she could only manage a quiet mumble. Having made up her mind, the girl asked to be shown the brooch. Abel observed that Gran had little understanding of women, noting that most were too intimidated to approach a man for the brooch. Abel cast a camouflage spell to ensure they wouldn't linger in anyone's memory unless specifically sought out, earning him a word of thanks from the girl. Gran apologized for overlooking the finer details and asked the girl to try on the brooch, a request she accepted without hesitation. The moment she donned the magical item, her appearance noticeably improved, prompting her to purchase the brooch without a second thought. The girl expressed her heartfelt gratitude to Gran. She noted that 4 large silver coins was a bargain for such an effect, and to make up for his earlier distraction, the hero decided to give her a gift. However, the customer failed to realize the true nature of the item he was handing over to her. Gran then asked for permission to touch her hand, and she readily agreed. He used the liquid from the bottle to paint her nails, an idea she found quite clever, especially since he explained that the potion could be easily wiped off and reapplied whenever she wanted a change. He informed her that he would return for the next 5-day market and invited her back to share her thoughts, a promise she was happy to make. After she departed, Grant remarked that she seemed like a truly pleasant person. While the hero is convinced he is helping women by fixing their physical flaws, Abel's reminder about the liquid mistle and the Merchant Guild registration causes Gran's mood to sour instantly. Kersia stopped by their kiosk to check on their progress, and Gran informed her that, thanks to her help, they were nearly sold out. As the girl examined the magical items on the table, she realized their unique traits identified them as grand sound accessories, but her focus soon shifted to a set of peculiar bracelets. After hearing the client's request, the hero explained that he could cast spells on the spot, though he was limited to basic protective magic. Kersia inquired about the specific effects of protective spells, prompting the hero to explain their function using the example of light shadow. He was under the impression that girls had a genuine fondness for friendship bracelets. Possessing limited knowledge of magical effects, she was simply curious to see how a spell would be performed directly in front of a client. Kersia dismissed herself as an ignorant merchant, but Gran disagreed, noting that no one could be expected to understand things they hadn't personally experienced. Realizing she would be working alongside Grand Sam, she decided it was essential to study his spellcasting and its various effects. She inquired about the recommended effect of the trinket for that specific situation. The hero advised everyone to prioritize protection against poison. He recommended a remedy for minor toxins like food poisoning or insect bites, reasoning that accidental exposure to poisonous substances is a common occurrence. When Kersia questioned if the item was truly worth a silver coin, Grant clarified that the material costs were minimal, as he had used standard embroidery thread with only a hint of aquatic spider silk and no magic stones. He cautioned that the item's effect would only work 2 or 3 times before wearing off, leaving it as nothing more than a disposable bauble. This standard protective gear is easily crafted from common materials. However, Kersia's sudden irritation left Abel looking at the hero with visible confusion. Raising her voice, the girl insisted that he set a fair price as a genuine sign of respect and appreciation for the creator's work. She inquired about the bracelet's protective limits, to which Gran clarified that while it only worked against local creatures like glass vipers or venomous spiders, it would be sufficient to neutralize the venom of a scaly-tailed. Kersia continued shouting through the market, warning everyone that while the listed creatures had lethal bites, his bracelet offered life-saving protection, a claim the hero quickly verified. This equipment was designed to prevent such issues beforehand. It was compact and cost only a single silver coin, leaving Gran completely confused by the turn of events. The girl argued that his product was valuable enough to justify a higher price, a point that Abel readily confirmed. He remarked that it was beneficial for Gran to be dealing with Kersia-chan, as her critiques might finally help him build some self-worth, and advised him to consult her before opening his next stall. However, he didn't want to impose on her, knowing she already had her own shop to manage. The girl agreed, explaining that she was already planning to attend the 5-day market and was genuinely looking forward to seeing Granason's wares. Abel explained that even after paying for Kersia-chan's services, the venture would remain profitable. Aiming to teach her grandson the art of commerce, she suggested setting an affordable starting price for the general public while still highlighting the unique value of certain items. Gran has no desire to follow the path of a merchant, choosing instead to focus his efforts on becoming a craftsman. After thanking him for the day, Kersia asked the magician for his thoughts on the 5-day market, only for him to admit he'd spent the entire time behind the counter while Gran wove friendship bracelets. He noted that he hoped to truly explore the area during his next visit. Once the dust settled, the heroes finally began their journey back home. Strange sounds echoing nearby convinced them that a monster was lurking within. Suddenly, the front door swung open and a man fled the house in a state of pure terror, prompting Grant to investigate what had occurred inside. Not far from the city, a tortoise had settled right on the main road, seemingly intent on blocking the path. Known as the tortoise, this massive turtle-like monster exceeds 10 meters in length and thrives in harsh volcanic wastelands. It possesses formidable magic resistance and a base strength of A rank, though its power can vary from B to S depending on the specific minerals it incorporates into its body. Furthermore, despite its impenetrable skin, the creature's meat is remarkably tender and tastes like chicken, making it a surprisingly delicate delicacy. Abel noted the monster's formidable presence while Gran estimated it was roughly 10 meters away. Despite the limited visibility in the dark, the hero planned to close the distance stealthily to get within firing range. After obtaining the weapon from Clay Road, the hero proceeded to enhance its power. The following morning at the guild, rumors circulated that none of the registered adventurers were capable of taking down a rank A+ monster. Although D and C rank adventurers have been recruited for this urgent mission, they are far from capable of taking down an A+ rank monster. A scouting party is required first, but the time it takes would leave the Eastern Highway closed for too long. With supply lines from the capital severed, the city will soon face a desperate shortage of resources. However, dispatching a hunting party was no guarantee of success, and the risk of casualties was a serious concern. A proposal was also made to form a joint force consisting of both soldiers and adventurers. Grant then asked the girl for a moment of her time. The hero offered to handle the monster investigation request himself, prompting the girl to recognize him as the adventurer who had recently processed his B-rank transfer. Garn mentioned his experience hunting small, iron-rich rock tortoises, and noted that he had a connection to an A-rank friend within the capital's guild. Equipped with an advanced identification skill, he could even analyze the specific minerals composing Rick and Tors, just as Abel introduced himself. With A and B rank heroes gathered before her, the soldiers immediately proposed forming a joint squad to improve their odds of success, but Abel declined, insisting that the monster's unpredictable strength made reconnaissance essential before taking action. With the highway now obstructed, the group was urgently requested to assist. Though Grand pointed out that his friend from the capital's guild lacked any authority in this region, when the hero asked the mage to scout the area, Abel pointed out that while numbers alone wouldn't secure a win, the mission was feasible, as long as they had enough warriors capable of damaging the monster. The soldier explained that since very few masters were capable of harming the creature, they had no choice but to turn to the guild for help. Gran countered that even if they had enough people to wound him, bringing him down would be far from easy. The girl proposed a reconnaissance mission, to which Gran agreed, stating they would approach the specimen to gather intel while she emphasized that their safety must remain the priority. Because this is an A-rank reconnaissance mission, the payout is equivalent to what one would receive for a B-rank monster extermination. Kersia questioned Grandson's proficiency in negotiations, while Almona, who wasn't well versed in the inner workings of the Adventurers Guild, decided to head out on a hunt instead. Ultimately, Grandson and Abel were assigned to scout the area, prompting her to ask about the protocol if they ended up engaging and defeating a monster during their mission. Gran explained that the mission would be reclassified, meaning the materials from the defeated monster would either be split among the group or bought and distributed by the guild, making it essential to use their strongest fighters to ensure victory. Abel clarified that their mission was strictly for reconnaissance, emphasizing that they were to avoid reckless combat and focus on scouting rather than hunting. Following the event, the magician inquired about their actual odds of securing a victory. The hero reasoned that as long as the monster wasn't composed of mithril, orichalcum, or high-grade adamantine, they still had a fighting chance. He deferred the decision to Abel, while the mage admitted his magic was ineffective against the monster, leaving him feeling powerless. Despite magic appearing ineffective, they realized victory was still possible through its use, prompting the heroes to spend the day meticulously refining their strategy. Deep in the mountains, Gran examined their enemy, noting the various green, blue, and gray patches across its form. He identified the gray sections as low-grade adamantine and the green spots as likely being jade, making Abel realize that his own appraisal skills were unnecessary. Gran categorized the monster as rank A+, based on his assessment. With their scouting and upgrades finalized, the team was now ready to move forward. Previously, the hero took down a rock tortoise, piercing its head with an arrow before it could even react. Although it was a small, weak specimen with a high iron content, Grant suspects it will attempt a single, wide-angle attack in a final display of confidence and tenacity. Because the monster can't be taken down in one hit, Grant needs to deplete its health and draw its focus so that Abel can deliver the finishing blow with magic. With everything in place, the hero prepared to put his plan into motion. After stacking as many enchantments as possible onto the bow, the adventurer added power and illusion effects to the arrowheads, feeling satisfied with the quality of the gear he had hastily put together just the day before. Leveling his bow at the monster, the hero pushed his physical strength to its peak and aimed directly for the rock tortoise's eye. Without a moment's hesitation, he let the arrow fly. His strike successfully connected with the mark. Under the lingering influence of the illusion, the monster's vision would not return right away. After attaining the grand rank, he proceeded to use the body enhancement potion. Should the monster counterattack, it unleashes a broad-range elemental strike, and it utilizes its levitating boots to negate earthquake damage by channeling mana through them. The hero suddenly realized he was standing right next to the creature. With the effects of his enhancement potion lasting only 5 minutes, he aims to settle the situation quickly before handing the lead over to Abel. His objective was to restrain the creature, ensuring it wouldn't pick up on Abel's presence. Initially, he found himself unable to make any meaningful progress. Grand exerted his strength in an attempt to hoist the monster. The hero was initially hesitant to use the treatment due to its overwhelming potency, but he soon realized he had no other choice. This body-enhancing potion is derived from Greenwake's blood. In truth, it consists of almost nothing but pure blood. Without hesitation, he downed the potion. The hero's body reacted instantly to the influence of Greenwake's blood. Once more, he attempted to hoist the monster. Following his success, the hero scattered several potion flasks directly beneath the enemy. Gran immediately retreated to ensure he wasn't caught in the blast. Even after that attempt, he failed to right himself, leaving him completely immobilized for the time being. The responsibility now fell on Abel, as Gran began to feel lightheaded from the effects of the potion he'd consumed. Despite the mage's claim that there would only be one wide-range attack at the start, Gran ended up launching one as well. The hero clarified that the entire situation had been nothing more than a simple mistake. Abel confidently declared that he would handle everything on his own moving forward. The magician promptly began his work. Grand reflected that his partner's outward appearance bore a striking resemblance to a demon lord. Focusing every bit of his energy, the sorcerer unleashed his full power to take down the enemy. While the tortoise was highly resistant to both physical and magical attacks, it remained a living creature with its own inherent vulnerabilities. Recognizing that every living being depends on air, Abel used spatial magic to isolate the monster and drain the oxygen from its surroundings, leaving Grant grateful to have an A-rank ally by his side. The crowd was left bewildered when the monster suddenly vanished, unable to make sense of the situation. Gran later clarified that the creature became unstable after he approached it too closely to examine its materials. After A-rank adventurer Abel defeated Rick and brought the situation under control, the remains of the tortoises were gathered and put into spatial storage. The soldiers were astonished by the immense scale of the storage capacity, and Abel proceeded to verify the hero's account of the events. Although the soldiers assumed magic was ineffective against the creature, Abel clarified that a limited impact didn't mean it was completely useless. They questioned him, seeking to confirm if he was truly the White Knight Mage from the Capital Guild. Though the magician felt a sense of recognition, the girl before him clarified that familiar wasn't the right way to describe their connection. Iona added that the man was a renowned great magician, well known in the area surrounding the capital. She also recognized the man standing beside him, identifying him as the flame beast tamer, Mr. Gran. Gran confirmed his identity but clarified that he wasn't a tamer, relying instead on physical combat. The girl was thrilled by the news, even as rumors spread from the Capital Guild to the city guard that he was managing the rough adventurers like a trainer taming wild animals with food. Upon realizing the soldiers were dealing with renowned adventurers, the girl explained that their fame in the capital was so great they even had a fan club, adding that she knew them both to be legendary dragon slayers. Abel verified that every detail of the situation was indeed accurate. These high-level guild cards are designed to document the magical signatures of S-rank adventurers and anyone who surpasses that rank. After the soldier acknowledged the situation, the mage confirmed the monster threat had been neutralized, meaning it was time for the men to report back to their lord. The girl pleaded with the heroes for a handshake, wanting a memento to remember them by. Abel expressed his gratitude for her level-headed approach, while she promised to share the details with the fan club and feature the story in their magazine. Grana was caught off guard that the situation had actually made its way into the magazine. The group of adventurers eventually arrived at Alicia and Kersia's home. Gran requested the monster meat Abel had gathered, explaining that he would collect the skin and shell later since the meat required a significant amount of time to cook. Upon returning to Iman, they reported to the guild and processed the carcass, strategically handing over some surplus materials to avoid any questioning regarding their reckless behavior. Pachero provided an update to Kersia and Alicia before inviting them to dinner, promising that he would one day serve them a meal prepared from that specific monster. He carved away the exact amount of meat he needed from the massive carcass. He prepared the dish using a combination of horseradish, meat, herbs, mushrooms, and various vegetables. Drawing on memories from his past life, he decided to test the rock tortoise, motivated by its striking resemblance to soft-shell turtles. Recognizing the liver's potent stimulating properties, which reminded him of soft-shelled turtles, he used his appraisal skill to confirm the meat was safe to eat before preparing to cook it. By utilizing this method, more materials can be extracted from a single ink, allowing them to be used much more efficiently. A single hero could likely live off this supply for a lifetime. Once the broth was ready, he incorporated sake to neutralize the scent before finally adding the meat and liver. Grant skims the impurities from the surface and cooks the dish thoroughly before finishing it with a seasoning of soy sauce. The vegetables are prepared separately and added to the dish only moments before serving. After preparing the oil for deep frying, he seasons half the meat with salt and marinates the rest in soy sauce. Meanwhile, the oil he was preparing had started to heat up. Grant carefully lowered each individual piece into the deep fryer. The savory aroma of fried food immediately whetted his appetite. After being deep fried, the meat took on a perfectly golden and appetizing appearance. Satisfied with his performance, the hero proceeded to honor their original agreement. Using his chopsticks, he picked up a single piece of meat. As he took a bite, he found the flavor to be milder than expected, resembling chicken, but with a much firmer texture that released a rich umami taste. It was far more delicious than the meal he had consumed in the dungeon long ago, likely due to his improved culinary skills and the monster's superior rank. Naturally, he found the grilled chicken delicious, even preferring certain preparations over others, and he now plans to evaluate monster meat based on both its rank and serving temperature. The hero now intended to put the monster's skin to use. He sliced the empera, the edible gelatinous edge of the shell, into thin strips and prepared the enoki mushrooms by cutting them into bite-sized pieces. Empera is rich in collagen and excellent for skincare, leading him to believe Alicia would truly appreciate it. He then briefly blanched the sliced emberu and enoki in boiling water. Once finished, he moves them into separate colanders to ensure they drain completely. After transferring the mixture to a bowl, he added thinly sliced cucumbers with a pinch of salt and sugar, mixing them thoroughly before finishing with a splash of vinegar. He places it in storage to marinate. ensuring the flavors are thoroughly infused. Meanwhile, another dish is prepared, one specifically crafted to pair well with alcohol. Recalling his favorite meal from his previous life, he began preparing sashimi by slicing the meat and liver into medium-thick pieces. He then scalded the milk in boiling water, quickly cooled it down, and mixed it into the meat. After arranging the ingredients on suitable leaves, he presents the finished meal. Gran called out to Abel, informing him that their preparations were nearly complete. Two guests emerged from their respective rooms at the exact same moment, ready for dinner. Grant expressed his joy at reuniting with his forest companion, while Abel noted that the creature appeared to be simply meditating. Together, they began preparing the table for their meal. Abel was thoroughly impressed, noting how incredible the monster meat tasted, but Gran advised him to start with another dish since the vegetables had only just been added to the stew. As Gran offered the heroes an aperitif, Abel grew suspicious, fearing the drink was actually Rictoraz's blood. The hero cautioned that the liquid was highly concentrated, explaining that its potent tonic effects meant it should only be consumed when diluted with wine. Abel chose to trust Gran's word, but suggested a secret ingredient from his family home if he planned on diluting the drink with wine. The party finally sat down to enjoy their evening meal. They winced in distaste as they took a sip of the drink. However, this particular wine proves to be a perfect complement to sashimi. Abel sought confirmation on whether sashimi was truly made of raw meat. Grant vouched for the meat's quality, suggesting Abel use an appraisal skill if he was skeptical, but the mage felt that doing so would only spoil the dining experience. Upon taking his first bite, he realized that he genuinely enjoyed the meal. Abel expected a fishy flavor but found the taste surprisingly neutral. Its firm texture made it easy to keep drinking, though he knew he had to be careful not to overindulge in the blood. Noticing a grilled chicken right in front of him, the magician decided to give it a try as well. While he found the sashimi enjoyable, he still preferred the grilled preparation for its remarkably firm texture, a sentiment Gran agreed suited his own tastes perfectly. Curious about his preference, the magician asked which dish he favored, to which Grant explained that he enjoyed both depending on the day. Abel remarked that this behavior was typical of him, while the heroes encouraged their forest companion to branch out and sample different dishes. Gran then presented a fresh spread of vinegar-marinated sides and a steaming nabe, explaining that the dish was more than just a soup, as it was primarily composed of meat and vegetables. Although the broth was drinkable, it had to be saved for the next course, leading Abel to once again admire his partner's extensive culinary knowledge. This extravagant dish was specifically meant to be used for seasoning.